generally in the mainstream society, the average person won't go to a seer until they don't know what to do with themselves. At that point, they reaching for straws. They'll try anything. And when they go to the seer, sometimes if they sincere and they on the and they tell them, from the heart, they can change their life for the better and give a whole new spin on how somebody living. Uh, how can you tell if you real? Poke yourself with a pen, and if it hurt, yep, you real. If you feel like you a natural healer, start studying everything related to healing that draws your interest. Cause just cause you a healer, it don't mean that you want to be a doctor, right? Sometimes you want to be a dietitian or a fitness guru or a life coach or a psychologist. So if you feel like you a healer, whatever draw your attention, study the shit out of it. You're going to study some of the other parts of healing too by studying the part that you're drawn to. The part that you're drawn to the strongest is called your calling. That's why you're drawn to it the strongest, because you're being called in that direction. Mm, okay, that's all the questions. Let me see if I got another guest in here. Styles by Nina. You want to come in? Got another question. Uh, so the question is, if a guy speaking evil on, you ain't never got to take it. That ain't what I mean by let karma deal with him. Sometime in order for you to do the right thing, JoJo, you got to punch a motherfucker in the face, push their snot box back. But sometimes you don't. Your job is to be able to distinguish when to kick that motherfucker in the balls for disrespecting you and when to pack your shit and make him come home to an empty house. Okay, so today we're gonna go over um, some information here about truth in plain sight. I'm warming up now, so I'm going here and do invite. Let's see how this. What's up with you, big dog? See you in there watching. We about to go into this truth in plain sight and decode this Hollywood and the life rules that have been kept from us. That's what we about to go into. You got me, Phil? So I'm gonna give us a minute for a couple more people to get on here, and then I'm gonna start going into the information because the rule. I'm gonna go with the rule first, so that y'all understand why they tell you in pop culture what's going on according to the times and the agenda. So the rule is this: anything they do to undermine your will, your right of choice, they have to tell you or give you the opportunity to discover the deception. So anything they do to you, they have to give you a means of discovering what they are doing to you. Now, they can tell you in a news report as a news story what they're doing to you. They can tell you in a book. They can tell you in a movie. Any format that the truth is revealed in, as long as the opportunity of you connecting the dots is available, then they are following the rules. So that's going to keep them in power if you don't know the rule. And so what we have here with the X-Men. Now, everybody is familiar with a Malcolm X interview with Louis Lomax called "The Hate That Hate Made." Nobody had never heard of the Nation of Islam on a national front before "The Hate That Hate Made" in 1958 with Louis Lomax. From then, the Nation of Islam exploded. And the big thing about the name, if you go back and look at the footage of Malcolm X, you'll hear him defending his usage of the X, right? So now the mainstream is aware of these men of the X, Malcolm X and these other X's. They call them X-Men. Now, while right on the heels of this, a couple years later, a comic book series emerged, and the comic book series is about X-Men. The X-Men are mutants with something wrong with a strain in their DNA that allow them to harness extra human powers. Now, the X-Men is a direct correlation to the doctrine of the Nation of Islam. The X-Men is about Elijah Muhammad and Masonry in the application of this in waking up and teaching people to control their mutant DNA, or what they would call in the African culture, they call it the God strain or the light strain. So if you can't control it, it's gonna destroy you. So the X-Men drew directly from the Nation of Islam idea of man as God. Now, if you examine the powers of some of the X-Men and you parallel it to the psychic phenomenon that people claim to experience, you'll find that in the animations and in the comic books, they are the same power, but the power is exaggerated in the cartoon or the animation. Example, Rogue. Rogue is Cajun. She's French. The name Rogue is actually Rouge, which is red, in reference to what they call the blood. And what is her power? If she touches anything, she absorbs their powers and she's able to use them. That's a form of vampirism in the psychic realms. So you study it as vampirism, you understand that rogue power is an exaggerated expression of vampirism, or energy vampirism to be more specific. So she is an energy vampire that can use the energy of somebody else. They find in paranormal research that there are people called empaths. And the level of empath determine how much of somebody else's characteristics or traits they can take on. So this is Rogue in the X-Men and her powers. Who else do you have with a power? You have Gambit, the gambler. What he does is called enchantment of an item. It's an enchantment. So what Gambit is doing with the deck of cards is he's charging the card with something called chi energy that's programmed to react in a certain way when it hit another force. So your chi energy is basically accumulated mind. The mind, the way you thinking, is accumulated into like a ball of energy that you can utilize. It's called chi, and that's what Tai Chi and Asia is all about, controlling that chi energy and developing it. So Gambit charges it. So all of these psychic phenomenon come from being from realizing the God gene or the God light strain within you. Then you have in the laboratory, you have this guy they call the Beast. The Beast is a blue dude that kind of look like an ape. If you know your Kemetic history, you would know him to be the baboon that they called Thoth or Jehuti, and that Professor X would be none other than Imhotep himself. So Imhotep, being educated by the master of masters, is right there. But in modern times, there's parallel Professor X with Elijah Muhammad as being the creator of the X-Men or the awakener of the God strain or the light strain. Now, what do I mean by Elijah Muhammad being the awakener of the God strain or the light strain? Now, if you look at Malcolm X in that fiery oratory, at the same time you had Martin Luther King with a fiery oratory. And they had two different philosophical viewpoints, but they all had the same agenda in the recovery from the oppression, right? Malcolm had a different view of passion when he looked at the problem and the situation, because he was seeing it with spiritual eyes as a warfare. So he looked at it as like a general, a warfare. So the method that Martin was using, he couldn't see it as a functional method to fight a war. But what Martin was doing was not trying to fight a war. What Martin was doing was trying to establish a relief and a peace. Excuse me 1 second. I'm supposed to be getting on this other. All right, got you. All right, so what Elijah Muhammad was doing was teaching Malcolm in a way that allowed Malcolm's light strain to be under control so as not to cause sheer destruction. And he did that with a method of discipline. So if you ever hear anybody talk about the Nation of Islam, one of the things that they always talk about in the fruit is that level of discipline. Because that level of discipline that they are teaching is, it got several benefits in the physical world, but from the spiritual standpoint, they need that level of discipline to control the light strain as it turns on, so as they don't become a menace and a terror within the environment that they are trying to stabilize. So Professor X, being the one teaching the mutants how to control the light strain as it turns on. Now, if you watch the storyline of the X-Men, you'll see that they're in Washington lobbying to exterminate the mutants. This is called, in the real life, this is Rex 84, that was Readiness Exercise 1984, that was drew up by Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. So this same thing was being lobbied some 25 years later in real life that parallels what took place in the animation series. So they wanted to wipe out the mutants. So if they wanted to wipe out the mutants and they passed the law, what do the mutants respond? The mutants is capable of destroying everybody in the X-Men. But what Professor X is trying to teach is that even though you have all this power, you're so powerful you can destroy a regular person, that's not just. So they taking this back to Egypt once again with the law of Mach, because no injustice can stand in the universe. So all of these characters are in the X-Men is actually exaggerated natural psychic abilities that we have, and these exaggerated psychic abilities make for good entertainment. But if you turn the volume down on them or take the exaggeration aspect out and you pick up a book on psychic abilities, you will be able to match up the exact psychic ability that they talk about as a mutant strain in the DNA. You'll be able to match it up. Like, for instance, Magneto. What is his ability? Magnetism. What is magnetism in the realm of psychic? It's massive charisma. It's the ability to draw others in. Well, they use his in reference to the actual metal. That's the exaggeration. But it's not really an exaggeration because a magnetic quality in the person appeals to the metals in the person that they attract. So in essence, it's an accuracy, but it's an exaggerated accuracy for the entertainment value, and so that you don't really know that they telling you a truth in plain sight while you are being entertained and you're not taking them serious. They've gave you the opportunity to discover this truth, and you the one who decided whether you would or would not acknowledge it as they showed it to you. So in moving from the X-Men, you find the movie Panther. Now Panther is a very unique character because he's one of the so-called first black superheroes, which is absolutely not the case, because the very first superhero on record, being Heru or Horus, the son, the sole son of the mother that resurrected and redeemed his father's throne. So that was the first black superhero in truth. But now, as we go into the movie Panther, we need to know the symbolism. What is the symbolism of the panther? Okay, in ancient times, priests wore leopard skins. Black leopard skins was reserved for a very, very specific group of political priests. And they were actually part of a royal court. And they were the practitioners of certain rights within the priesthood in order to maintain the balance. And that's what the black was over the spots. If you look at a panther, it's either a black leopard or a black jaguar or whatever the case may be. You can see the black spots if you really look at them. But the leopard also represents in Egypt the goddess Bast. So when you have to examine her qualities, and you will see that she was also represented in the movie Panther when it very first come on. There was no coincidence who they got to play the mother, because in real life, her name, we call her Angela Bassett. And if you translate the Greek to the English, her name is Angel of Bast. And she played the mother of the Panther, the prince. So they're going back to the Black Madonna and Child once again with the movie Panther. Now, this is very significant to modern pop culture, because in modern pop culture, we have the legacy of Tupac Amaru Shakur as the son of Afeni Shakur, the Black Panther. And that's why, if you notice when it come on, it starts in Oakland. Now, in Oakland is where Tupac's rap career really developed after he left Baltimore School of the Arts. So the movie was like a cursor or a predictor of how the events in the final age is supposed to unfold. So you take a look at the movie Panther. When it first come on, you see a alien ship, but the ship is not truly alien. It's African and it's cloaked and it's from Earth. So there is a clue right there to something. So we have to go search our history. We have to search our Native American history, our African history, our Asian history to find out if this movie has any validity in the storyline.